Hey, beautiful people, welcome back. If you are tuning in for the first time, welcome. On this podcast, we explore everything around self-healing, health, personal growth, the mind-body connection, relationships, and more. Just thinking, I still haven't done a proper intro, one with some music, a little jingle. Anyway, it is what it is. We're here. You're getting the content. The intro is on the way. Okay, so today we are going to be talking about self-compassion and becoming your own friend. And yes, I'm sure some of you listening are already thinking, ugh, cliche, haven't got time for that. That sounds fluffy. But I'm going to be your coach in this episode. I'm going to be your hype girl and say some things that perhaps you have forgotten, because self-compassion is very important. I'll also bring in a few facts, health related, along the way, just so you can really understand the importance of cultivating this strong relationship with yourself. One thing I say to my clients is, if you treated your friends the way you treat yourself, would you have any left? Are you talking to yourself the way you talk to your closest friends, your closest people? And most people, 9 times out of 10, people say, no way. Like, there is no way I am kind to everyone else, and I find it hard to be kind to myself. Many of us aren't kind to ourselves. Many of us aren't taught how to be kind to ourselves. We pour love into everyone else, but we lose sight of ourselves pretty quickly. So self-compassion, it's like a muscle that we have to train. And with that, I really want to remind you before we start that self-compassion, becoming your own friend, it's not so much of a destination, but it's a consistent practice. It does get easier through neuroplasticity, which is that brain's ability to be retrained, but it can fluctuate depending on how we prioritize our time, our energy, and our focus. And I know from my own experience that becoming your own friend, practicing self-compassion, it also takes discipline and accountability. You know, sometimes it's not until we stop we can really acknowledge how much we have shifted our behaviors and our patterns over time. And as I was thinking about this episode, I really took the time to reflect on my own journey with self-compassion in my own life. And I can tell you this will be really helpful for anyone who struggles with self-compassion. I have come such a long way with being my own friend. I used to really struggle with a lot of critical thoughts in my teens and my early 20s, which were really rooted in the way that I viewed my body. Body image issues, which a lot of us go through. And then on top of that, it made it even harder when I had chronic pain, because I became even more resentful of my body and the fact that it wasn't working the way that I wanted it to. I also used to struggle a lot with comparison mode, and I didn't see the qualities that I liked in other people. I didn't see them in myself. So in that sense, I was quite critical on myself. I very much operated from this type A personality where I would work really hard, but inadvertently could be really critical to myself if I didn't achieve what I knew I was capable of. So there was this constant stream of self-critical thoughts. And yeah, I have really transformed the way that I relate to myself, the way that I talk to myself. And that has just happened in small choices and building that trust. It's taken time, it's taken patience, it's taking meeting myself where I am at in a certain season. And the reason why I'm really sharing this is because we can get to this healthy place where our inner voice is a lot kinder. And those inner critic thoughts, yes, they come up sometimes. I'm human, that's normal, but I'm not staying in them. That is not my constant self-talk. So really the place we want to aim towards is having some awareness around our self-talk, the relationship we have with ourselves, and having tools to shift if we are being critical or soothe ourselves faster. So we come back to being more compassionate. So why is it important to be our own friend? Why is it actually important? Well, firstly, I know the relationship we have with ourselves, the way we talk to ourselves, it impacts our health. Part of the work I do with my clients is helping them to coach themselves in a more compassionate way. I believe it's only from this place that you can really transform your health, because most people don't realize that if you're consistently having self-critical thoughts, that can be interpreted as a threat to the nervous system, And then that drives that chronic stress response and then creates those changes in our physiology. And that is what drives illness. So self-compassion, it's linked to improved cardiovascular well-being, improved sleep, it reduces stress. My teacher, Dr. Phil Parker, even said on his podcast that studies suggest that self-compassionate meditation over time can even change your telomeres, and telomeres are at the end of our genes. So we could even argue that self-kindness, self-compassion impacts the aging process in a positive way. And beyond health, when we work on the relationship within, we practice self-compassion, it changes everything. The way we receive opportunities that we are presented, the choices we make, the people that we decide come into our life and stay in our life, the actions we take, everything. So that's why, but how do we actually become our own friend? I want to bring us back to some basics and some things that you can do, some tangible steps you can take to cultivate this relationship. Okay, so number one, first of all, I want you to understand that you are inherently worthy. You are worthy of being kind to yourself. You are deserving and you are good enough. And I think this is at the core of self-compassion. Before I even share more tips, we've got to understand where the self-critiquing comes from, because I'm just going to take some time to remind you that this isn't actually you. These thoughts aren't actually you. Somewhere back in our past, we have adopted, if you struggle with self-compassion, we've adopted this negative internal conversation. You know, you might hear things from parents, from schooling, you might witness things. And when you're a child, you're piecing together, you're trying to make sense of how life works. You don't have the capability to look at different perspectives. You don't have the capability to critical think, to argue a point. So you take this information as fact. And because we have this inbuilt negativity bias, we're going to take the information that sticks. And often, for many of us, when we're younger, we have learned that receiving love or validation is built on conditions, meaning it's not unconditional, it is based on a series of conditions. For example, if you do this thing, we will praise you. If you're a good girl, you will get this reward. If you do this is the right way, so you are going to get rewarded for that. We are rewarded by behaving in particular ways. And over time, our subconscious finds more evidence to support these beliefs. Through school, through work, when we're older, going through uni, raising a family. What happens is we take on this internal dialogue of, if I don't do this, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy of rest. I'm not worthy of support. I'm not worthy of change. I'm not worthy of receiving unless I do this. Over time, we can become really critical to ourselves if we don't meet our own self-expectations. So rather than seeing it as something you have to strive towards, becoming worthy and becoming good enough, you are already there. It's just about uncovering the layers of conditioning that have meant we have learnt otherwise. So somebody who knows that they are worthy, they talk to themselves more compassionately. This is important because if we treat ourselves as we are worthy and deserving, we begin to have thoughts and take actions that help us fill up our own cup. We're not going outside of ourselves to find those kind words in other people, to find that validation, to find that approval, which a lot of the time can look like overworking to impress a boss or staying in toxic relationships, both of which, by the way, can also impact our health because we begin to override our body's cues. So I want to reiterate, you are enough. Being enough and worthiness is not something you need to work towards. You are always worthy to treat yourself kindly. And if you operate from the belief that you are inherently worthy, you deserve to treat yourself well just as you would a friend, you will start to show yourself more compassion. Number two, the second thing we can do to build that self-compassion to become our own friend is take intentional time to reflect and talk nicely to yourself. You see, life is so busy that we're kind of on the move consistently a lot of the time, and we don't stop and really reflect and sit with those reflections. So if you're someone who struggles with that inner self-talk, I want you to try this exercise. I want you to write down, let's say in the morning, do this for a whole week. Number 1, what am I grateful for in my life currently? Number 2, what is a choice that I have made recently that I am proud of? Number 3, what do others see in me that I am learning to see in myself? And number 4, what action could I take to show I am somebody who cares and values myself? I personally do this, but I do this in the mirror. I get in front of the mirror and say these really confidently. I do have a journaling practice as well, but just by taking that time to reflect, really thinking about these questions, we are getting our brain to filter in a different way. What we focus on strengthens, and the more we start to do this, the easier it gets, and we can change what our brain is filtering for. But this is the key. It takes consistency, and that's why I say you've got to make it a practice. So it could be just taking 5 minutes to do this every morning or before bed. It's really about consistently retraining the brain to look for things that you like, look for things that you're grateful for, look for things that are working well. So what is also really interesting is that a lot of the thoughts we have day to day, they are the same ones. And sometimes for some of us, it might feel like the inner critic is really strong. But what could be happening is that the same thoughts, the same patterns, the same core issues that are tripping us up, that are leading into this inner critic. So really keep an eye on your thoughts as you move through the day and just get curious, what thoughts are consistently coming up that are leading me to being self-critical? And that will give you an idea as to where you can start and start to challenge these thoughts. Again, the key here is rewiring these pathways. The more that we can challenge our automated autopilot thoughts, the more we are retraining the brain. Given time, given practice, these nerve pathways will always change. Number 3, to cultivate self-compassion, to be your own friend, keep small promises to yourself. We don't think twice about making promises to others, but are we keeping the ones that we make with ourselves? So honoring your word to yourself really reinforces this self-trust, which I believe is at the core of self-compassion. Sticking to those commitments and those promises takes a level of discipline, but we all know that feeling of when we complete something and how good it feels once we've done it. I think for so many of us, we make these huge self-commitments. We have these huge goals and we look really far ahead and put more pressure on ourselves to figure out how it's going to happen. When is it going to happen? How is it going to happen? In the past, I did this a lot. I would make these huge promises to myself, like you've got to work out 5 times a week for 6 weeks. You must ring a friend, 3 times a week and eat well every day. I'd create a whole lot of different goals at once, and I would extend these goals like 6 months into the future. And at times I would stick to these goals, these promises, absolutely. But when I faltered or when I didn't accomplish something for the day, I would get into this loop of guilt and self-criticism. And I know that everyone works differently, but I now set an intention 4 times a year. I break my year into 4 parts, 3 months per part. And that way my goals and the promises I make myself, they feel more realistic and achievable. So what I believe is when we consistently meet these mini goals, we build the confidence in our ability to follow through with what we say we're going to do. And that is where we build the self-trust. And sometimes we have to start really, really small. Like in the past, like I said, I'd have these big goals, these big self-promises. But when I was moving through grief, my self-promise was to get out of bed in the morning. Literally, I started from ground zero, or cook yourself a nourishing meal. So just know that your promises to yourself, they might change depending on where you're at in life, but it's about keeping them small and achievable and building momentum that way. So check in with yourself. What is one commitment that you can make to yourself? It might be in your routines. It might be just a focus you have for the week ahead. Really commit to that and build that momentum. And another point that I want to make is resistance is normal. And it's actually when we do those uncomfortable things, the things that we've been avoiding or putting off, or the things that feel like at the edge of what is possible, that's often when we foster that self-compassion and trust. We shy away with doing uncomfortable things because it doesn't feel like self-love in that moment. We can all look back at the times where we really felt that self-compassion, and that is when we were committed to doing something, even at the time if it felt slightly out of our comfort zone. And it's when we reflect on those moments that we are often the most proud of ourselves. We're building that resilience, we're building that capacity. What really helps me follow through with those small commitments, those small goals, is connecting to the future version of me, my future self. And like I said, I'm not really thinking too far ahead. At this point in my life, I'm taking my life in 3-month installments. You can do this for 6 months, a year, 5 years. So what I do, I think 3 months from now, if I have followed through with all my self-promises, what would that version of Bianca look like? What is she going to look like? What is her self-talk going to be like? How is she going to be showing up? What opportunities are coming her way? And it's really just connecting, helping me connect to my why. I think that's really important because otherwise, day to day, we can forget, why am I doing this? What's the point in doing this task? Why do I have to eat healthy? Why am I trying to be kinder to myself? If we're connecting to ourselves in the future, it's keeping us on track as to why we are doing things day to day. It helps me to connect to something bigger. It really helps ground me into why I am motivating myself to accomplish everything I say I'm going to do. Number 4, to cultivate self-compassion, to become your own friend, what you can do is purposely incorporate things that make you feel good, keyword, feel good, during your days. I have learned that when I prioritize activities that really nurture my physical, emotional, mental well-being and plant these feel-good things in my day, that is a sign for me that I am nurturing myself. There's the basic parts of self-care, like getting enough sleep and eating nourishing foods, moving regularly, practicing relaxation techniques. There's those sort of things that we know when we do, we are kinder to ourselves and we're kinder to everyone else. But there's also those things that you can do just for yourself that really make you feel good. So it might be putting on a certain song in the morning while you're getting ready. It might be buying yourself some new active wear, making an effort, putting on some lipstick or dressing up. It could just be making that decision to cook the kids an easy dinner so that you have 15 more minutes to read a book. It could be taking your lunch break. It could be lying in the sun for 5 minutes in peace. These are all things that are relatively simple, but they're just bringing us back into our body. They are things that feel good. Buying yourself flowers. These are all quite feminine ones. If there's any males listening, you guys might have a completely different way of treating yourself and what you choose to ground yourself. But these are all things that when we do, and we plant strategically throughout our day or throughout our weeks, we are coming back into that regulated state. And also we are treating ourselves like we want to be treated. And that is key. I'll be honest, there have been times when, especially in the last few years, where I have been struggling in many areas and nothing was flowing. And yet I knew deep down that prioritizing self-care and prioritizing moments to come back to myself and feel joy and feel calmness in the day is a way that I could look after myself. And from that place, that is when things start to flow again. They don't flow when we're in survival mode, rushing through the day, not prioritizing taking a lunch break, not prioritizing taking 5 minutes for yourself. So keep that in mind. Purposely incorporate things that make you feel good into your day. And finally, number 5, the 5th way to build self-compassion and become your own friend is to use your relationships as feedback as to where you can work on yourself. I'll give you an example. So if you're seeing similar patterns, or you're getting told the same thing over and over again by somebody well-intended in your life, put on your investigation hat and become a bit of an investigator. You've got to take back that internal locus of control and think, what is my part to play in this? Where can I look at this a bit deeper? For example, if you're entering the same types of romantic relationships, you're seeing the same patterns repeat, there is an opportunity there to see what this pattern is about. So how can other people make us more compassionate towards ourselves? Well, for example, romantic relationships. If we get the same patterns repeat, by the way, in any situation in life, the same patterns will repeat if we have not learned the lesson. It's just going to show up in another person, another situation. We get the same patterns repeat in a new relationship. This person is betraying our trust. This person is not listening. This person is not treating us as we want to be treated, but we are staying. The belief behind that is what I am worthy of, and that is what I am deserving of. And you'll keep going to try and make that work. The real question, if we start to get curious as to why am I hanging around, if this isn't what I truly want, why am I staying in this situation? The real type of question is, who would I have to become to make a different choice? What sort of thoughts would I have to have internally? What sort of relationship would I have to have with myself internally if I was to no longer put up with this behavior and make a new choice? Getting in touch with what would that person be thinking of themselves. That's where we can start to use other people as a mirror to see what we need to work on within. I hope I'm making sense. I'm sort of just saying this on the spot. Let's take another example. So let's imagine you are finding yourself like completely burnt out, overworking in your current job. You are taking on the roles and responsibilities of others because you feel like you've got no choice and you just do things faster. But you're also starting to think, well, I think this happened in my last job as well. So it's a bit of a recurring pattern. You're not feeling valued. Likely what is under this behavior is a boundaries and self-worth belief that's getting in the way. So how we can use other people as a reflection for our own compassion is understanding that other people's actions, patterns that are going on in our life, are trying to show us where we can be more compassionate and develop the relationship we have with ourselves. In this case, it would be developing your internal boundaries. Who would you have to become, and what sort of relationship would you have with yourself? What sort of thoughts would you be having if you were that person that could set clear boundaries? If you were that person that could communicate assertively but lovingly to other people and learning to say no. These are the sorts of things that we can start to reflect on. Through other people, we can just see in ourselves what areas need a little bit more attention so we can get to the core of some of those repeating patterns. And lastly, on this point, we can use other people as mirrors back to us. If we are seeking feedback from family and friends, making sure we are around people that build us up, that can give us positive praise, that can give us, positive, constructive criticism, constructive feedback. People that will say things to us that can really help identify our blind spots, but build us up. Because when we hear positive feedback, it can affirm our abilities and it can help us build that confidence within. They can help us, other people, the people close to us can help us, remind us of things that we just may have forgotten. So I was going to finish with the 5, but as I'm doing this, there's one more that's coming up and I really want to speak on it. So the last way I think we can cultivate more self-compassion, become our own friend, is through practicing acceptance of self and forgiveness. I want you to remember that sometimes self-compassion, it's not about being positive all the time. To me, it's more about self-acceptance and accepting ourselves where we are at. learning to really embrace our strengths and our weaknesses at times and our quirks without judgment. When I got to this place of more self-acceptance for all of me, my experiences, the things I don't love about myself, that's when my compassionate voice was online. A big part of learning self-compassion internally for me has also been forgiveness. Forgiveness of what I didn't know when I was younger. Forgiveness for other people in my life that I held a lot of anger towards at certain times. And it takes a level of humility just to realize that you were doing the best you could for yourself with the skills and knowledge you had at a certain time in your life. Holding on to guilt and resentment to yourself and other people, it only weighs you down and it keeps you stuck in these negative thought loops in the past. Like, I should have acted different. I should have known different. If I'd done this differently, things would have changed. Remember that the past is in the past and we can only take lessons and do our best to move forward in a loving way. So guys, we're coming to the end. I'm glad I remembered to add that last bit in about forgiveness and acceptance because I really think it is key to cultivating that compassionate relationship within. Remember that building a strong and supportive relationship with yourself, it takes time, it takes effort. Be patient with yourself, be compassionate as you navigate this journey. And if you need support in doing that, if you need someone to help you point out your blind spots and support you with this, please do get in touch because this is what I do as a coach. Thank you guys for taking the time to tune in. And again, I just love having you here on this journey with me. I am recording 3 interviews this week, 3 guests. So we've got some really cool interviews coming up. Have a beautiful week ahead, and I'll catch you on the next episode.